The first event I will cover is the South African Apartheid. In 1948, a system of apartheid was established in the country of South Africa. The system's purpose was to reserve the best education, civil rights, land, and overall quality of life for the whites in that region, and to deny them to other ethnic groups. As you'll see, the system had a very negative effect on most of the country's people. People groups involved in the apartheid situation included the black Africans and other ethnic groups who made up the majority of the South African population, and the Afrikaners, or Boers, who made up the white population of South Africa. They made up only 13% of the total population, however. In the 1600s, the first Boers settled in South Africa. In 1795, the British took their land, forcing them north where they had conflicts with black Africans. In 1902, the British made Afrikaner land a commonwealth. They put Boers in a higher social position than the blacks. In 1910, South Africa got independence, and the Boers were left in control of the government. In 1948, the Afrikaner Nationalist Party took control of the government and established apartheid to ensure white political dominance in South Africa in the years to come. This video will highlight the effect of apartheid on blacks.
Laws made white people officially superior, and the large black majority faced discrimination in every aspect of their lives. Living, doing business, or owning land in white areas was banned. There were separate public facilities, transport, and schools. Interracial marriage was banned. Many had no right to citizenship and were regarded as aliens in major cities. Instead, they were made citizens of Bantustans, homelands scattered throughout.
Of course, blacks were unhappy with apartheid. The first outbreak of violent resistance occurred in 1960 and was called the Sharpeville Massacre. South African police responded brutally to protesters, killing and wounding more than 200 people. Nelson Mandela led peaceful protests against apartheid but was arrested. As more and more people began to protest, the South African police responded with more and more brutality. Over 30,000 blacks were jailed as a result of protests in 1983. Beside internal pressure to end apartheid, the system of apartheid began to be opposed internationally. Other nations cut ties with South Africa to show their disapproval. In the 70s, South Africa was kicked out of the United Nations and the Olympic Games. Finally, in 1989, F.W. de Klerk became the South African Prime Minister. Growing pressure to end apartheid led him to release Nelson Mandela from prison and to work with him to end apartheid and write a new constitution in 1990. Today, South Africans live free of the oppressive system of apartheid. The next event I will cover is the Rwandan Genocide of 1994, in which members of the Hutu ethnic group viciously murdered members of the Tutsi ethnic group. In weeks, 800,000 men, women, and children died.
Wait, no, don't start it yet.
Hutus are shorter and darker skinned than Tutsis, who are taller and lighter skinned and resemble Europeans more. However, their differences are so subtle that you can't tell them apart without ID cards. The Hutus and Tutsis had coexisted until 1916, when the Belgians colonized Rwanda and put the Tutsis in power over the Hutus because they looked more European. In 1962, Rwanda got independence from Belgium, and the Hutus gained power. Many of them resented the way the Tutsis had been treated better by the Belgians. Tensions between the groups increased. In 1994, the Hutu Rwandan president was killed allegedly by Tutsi rebels. In response, the Hutu government targeted the Tutsi political opposition to kill. The Hutu militia called the Interahamwe took things even farther and began to kill off anyone who was Tutsi. This next video will show you the importance of radio propaganda in the genocide.
Was a brilliant instrument of propaganda. First thing they did is they played rock music and good music that enticed people to listen to it.
They began their campaign by dehumanizing the enemy, calling them snakes and cockroaches.
World leaders who knew about the genocide did little to prevent it. The United Nations withdrew from Rwanda after only 10 of its men were killed. Stopping it early on could have prevented most of the damage done. Aside from massive loss of life, the genocide caused widespread poverty in Rwanda. The genocide only ended after the Rwandan Patriotic Front defeated the Hutus and President Paul Kagame took power. The final event I will cover is the genocide in Darfur. Darfur is a western region of Sudan the size of France. The majority of people living there are African Muslims who farm, and there's a minority of Arab Muslims who are mostly herders. Conflicts have increased between these groups due to land conflicts after droughts and the fact that the Arab-led Sudanese government favors the Arabs. During World War I, Britain wanted to colonize Darfur. Darfur resisted, and war broke out. In 1917, Darfur became part of the British Empire, and it was combined with Sudan. In 1956, Sudan, now including Darfur, gained independence. Arab elites were given power, and Darfur was neglected under their rule. In 2003, Darfuri rebel movements mainly made up of Africans started a revolt against the Sudanese government to protest their lack of government representation. The government responded by using an Arab militia called the Janjaweed to systematically target African villages, killing men, women, and children. Their goal was to stop the African rebellion by eliminating the entire ethnic group. 400,000 people have been killed and more than 2.5 million have been forced to leave their homes, going to refugee camps where conditions are bad and many die anyway.
In Darfur alone, 400,000 people have been killed since 2003. A UN investigation estimated in 2008 that a third of the entire Darfuri population, 4 million people, have been forced from their homes and displaced. It has been 2 years since the government and rebel fighters signed a treaty in Sudan, yet the people of this war-torn province have yet to find safety. The truth is, unless the international community cohesively takes initiative to dispel violence from Sudan, the people of this war-torn nation will never find peace.
In 2004, China vetoed UN involvement in Sudan, not wanting to break its ties with its main supplier of oil. Though the U.S. has sent large amounts of humanitarian aid to Darfuri refugees, the conflict continues to this day, with thousands of people still dying every month. In conclusion, other nations will have to intervene to end the vicious killing in Darfur.